You are holding a book. It feels solid, heavy, permanent. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, bound in black leather with gold lettering that says, Holy Bible. You've been taught that this object is a monolith, a single unified voice that descended from heaven, perfect and complete. But that physical solidity is an illusion. The book in your hands is not a monolith. It is a survivor. It is the result of a violent, centuries-long war of ideas where the winners wrote the history and the losers were erased from existence. But what if the losers didn't actually disappear? What if the books that were banned, burned, and buried are actually still here, waiting to speak? We are about to open the archives that the establishment tried to keep shut for 2,000 years. We are going to look at the suppressed scriptures, the heretical gospels, and the lost prophecies that shatter the single-story narrative of Christianity. From the high-tech, temperature-controlled vaults of the Vatican to the scorching, sun-bleached caves of the Judean wilderness, we are going hunting for the Bible's hidden wonders. Because the story you know is only half the truth. To understand how a book gets lost, we first have to understand how a book gets found and deemed holy in the first place. We have to go back to the beginning, to a time when there was no New Testament. Picture the Mediterranean world in the 2nd century. It is a chaotic marketplace of ideas. There is no central church headquarters, no pope, no printed Bibles. Instead, you have scattered communities of believers in Rome, in Carthage, in Alexandria, passing around crumbling papyrus scrolls. One church is reading a Gospel of Peter. Another is reading a letter from Clement. A third is reading something called The Shepherd of Hermas. It is a spiritual free-for-all. This chaos terrified the early church leaders. As Christianity began to spread through the iron veins of the Roman Empire, the bishops realized a hard political truth. You cannot build a unified church on a fractured foundation. They needed a canon. The word comes from the Greek canon, meaning a measuring rod. They needed a ruler to measure what was truth and what was trash. But who gets to hold the ruler? The fight for the Bible began with a man named Marcion of Sinope around 140 AD. Marcion wasn't just a theologian, he was an editor with a machete. He looked at the Old Testament, with its wars, its plagues, and its jealous God, and he said, "This cannot be the Father of Jesus." He concluded that there were actually two gods, a lesser, wrathful, incompetent creator deity in the Old Testament, and the supreme, loving God of the New Testament. So, Marcion created the first Bible by literally throwing out the entire Old Testament and hacking away at the Gospels until only a modified version of Luke remained. He was declared a heretic, but he forced the church's hand. They had to decide what stayed and what went. This wasn't a peaceful committee meeting. It was a centuries-long brawl. Church fathers screamed at each other in letters. They debated whether the book of Revelation was a holy prophecy or the ravings of a madman. They argued over books you have likely never heard of. It took until the year 367 AD, over 300 years after Jesus, for a powerful bishop named Athanasius of Alexandria to finally put his foot down. Fresh from the Council of Nicaea, Athanasius wrote a festal letter listing 27 books, the exact 27 books in your New Testament today, and declared, "Let no one add to these, let nothing be taken away." This was the moment the door slammed shut. Athanasius labeled everything else apocrypha, hidden things, and dismissed them as the invention of heretics. The order went out. Stop reading them. Destroy them. If you were a monk in the Egyptian desert and you loved these other books, you had a choice. Burn them or hide them and pray they survive the ages. For 1,500 years, we thought the fire won. We thought these voices were silenced forever. We were wrong. Shift your gaze to the year 1947. The place is Qumran, a desolate moonscape of limestone cliffs overlooking the Dead Sea. The silence here is absolute. A Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad ed Tib is looking for a stray goat. He sees a small opening in the cliff face. It's too dark to see inside, so he picks up a rock and throws it into the blackness. He expects to hear the thud of stone on stone. Instead, he hears something that stops his heart. The sharp, cracking sound of shattering pottery. That sound was the first crack in the traditional history of the Bible. Inside that cave, and 10 others discovered over the next decade, were clay jars containing the Dead Sea Scrolls. This wasn't just a few papers. It was an entire library of over 900 manuscripts, preserved by the dry desert air for 2 millennia. When scholars began to piece together the thousands of fragments, they realized they were looking at a time capsule from the exact era of Jesus. The discovery did 2 contradictory things simultaneously. First, it confirmed the stability of the Old Testament. They found a scroll of Isaiah that was 1,000 years older than any copy we previously possessed. And yet, it was almost identical to the one in your Bible today. It proved that Jewish scribes were masters of preservation. But the scrolls also revealed a Jewish world far stranger than anyone imagined. This library belonged to a sect called the Essenes, hardcore survivalists who viewed the temple in Jerusalem as corrupt. They retreated to the desert to prepare for the end of the world, calling themselves the Sons of Light, fighting against the Sons of Darkness. And in their Bible, the canon was different. They revered books that were later cut from the team. Take the Book of Enoch. This is a text that reads like a sci-fi epic. It describes fallen angels called the Watchers, descending to Earth, mating with human women, and creating a race of hybrid giants. It explains the origins of demons and magic. The New Testament writers knew this book. They even quoted it. But the later church suppressed it. For centuries, the West thought Enoch was lost, preserved only in the isolated mountains of Ethiopia. But here, at Qumran, Enoch was a bestseller. The Dead Sea Scrolls proved that the spiritual landscape Jesus walked through was filled with demons, giants, and apocalyptic visions that we have since sanitized out of the story. But if the Dead Sea Scrolls expanded our view of Judaism, the next discovery would threaten to blow up the foundations of Christianity itself. We travel south, deep into Upper Egypt, to the cliffs of Nag Hammadi. It is December 1945. Another unintended discovery. A farmer named Muhammad al-Saman is digging for fertilizer when his shovel strikes a buried jar. He hesitates to open it. Local superstition says these jars contain jinn, or evil spirits. But greed wins out. He hopes for gold. He smashes the jar. There is no gold. Just 13 leather-bound books written on papyrus. Disappointed, he dumps them at home. His mother actually burns some of the pages in the oven to bake bread. What went up in smoke was priceless history, because when scholars finally got their hands on the surviving texts, they realized they were looking at the forbidden library that Athanasius had ordered destroyed. These were the Gnostic Gospels. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek gnosis, meaning knowledge. These Christians didn't believe you were saved by faith or by the crucifixion. They believed you were saved by waking up. Their theology turns the Bible upside down. They taught that the God of the Old Testament, the creator of this physical world, was not the true God. They called him the Demiurge, an ignorant, arrogant, lesser deity who trapped divine sparks of light in bodies of flesh. In the Gnostic view, Jesus was an alien messenger sent from the true, unknowable God to give us the secret code to break out of this prison. The Nag Hammadi library is full of this radical thought. Read the Gospel of Thomas. It has no miracles, no crucifixion, no resurrection. It is just 114 sayings of Jesus. He says, "The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you." It's not a place you go when you die. It's a state of consciousness you achieve right now. Or look at the Gospel of Mary. This text creates a scandal by placing Mary Magdalene above the male apostles. It portrays her as the one disciple who truly understood Jesus' teachings, while Peter is depicted as jealous and misogynistic, asking, "Did he really speak with a woman in private, rather than openly to us?" This isn't just a theological difference. It's a political one. It suggests that there was a version of early Christianity where women were leaders and mystics before the hierarchy took over and pushed them to the margins. The discovery of these lost books isn't just about ancient history. It's happening right now in the age of technology. We are still finding things. Let's go back to the Vatican Library. A scholar named Grigory Kessel was recently analyzing a boring, standard medieval manuscript. But he suspected something lay beneath. In the ancient world, parchment was expensive. Scribes would often take an old book, scrape off the ink with a knife, and write a new book on top. This is called a palimpsest. Using ultraviolet photography, Kessel looked through the top layers of text and found a ghost. Beneath the writing was a translation of the Gospel of Matthew from the 3rd century, older than almost any Greek manuscript we have, and it was different. In the famous scene where the disciples are picking grain on the Sabbath, the Standard Bible says they picked the heads of grain and ate. The hidden Syriac text adds a tiny, tactile detail. They picked the heads of grain, rubbed them in their hands, and ate. It's a small thing, but it humanizes them. It shows us a text that was breathing, evolving, and shifting before it was frozen in place. So what do we do with all this? Do we throw out the Bible? No. We do something more difficult. We accept complexity. The discoveries at Qumran, Nag Hammadi, and the Vatican teach us that the Bible is not a static object that fell from the sky. It is a library built by human hands, curated by human minds, and survived by human determination. These hidden wonders, the stories of giants, the secret sayings of Jesus, the leadership of Mary Magdalene, don't weaken the history of faith. They deepen it. They remind us that the conversation about God has always been wild, diverse, and contentious. The sand is still shifting. The archives are deep, and if history has taught us anything, it's that the desert hasn't given up all its secrets yet. Keep looking.